Well, hello and welcome to my new exciting series called Cool People. Now, what is Cool People, you may ask? Well, over the last couple of years since I started my transition and certainly going out very publicly as being trans and doing my trans awareness training and public speaking, I've met all sorts of amazing people and who've got incredible stories to tell. And I just realised that I've got a whole range of people who are, they've just got such brilliant stories and they're lovely people. And I just thought this was a great opportunity to share them with you. Now, what I thought I'd do was actually record some chats, some interviews with some of my friends to share them with you over Zoom, because at the moment we can't go out and talk to anybody because of the coronavirus. So we're all stuck at home, and I thought this is a really good thing to do. So my very first cool person, who is a very cool person, is a lovely lady called Jessica Lynn. Who is not only my friend, but she is a Kinsey Institute Global Ambassador and an international speaker. And I'm so honoured that she's agreed to do this very first one with me. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. You are putting 100 pounds in the mail, right? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing you. Thank you, Katie. Thank you for having me. You know me. I'm going to throw a little humor into everything.
Absolutely. And I think that's what it's all about, because obviously having listened to some of your presentations, you have the same approach that I do, is that you have to entertain people as well as to inform people. And put humour in. I think humour is very, very important. Now, I know you've got a very incredibly powerful story, so I think if I hand it over to you, and if you can tell us your story, please, Jessica.
Well, my name is Jessica Lynn. I am 55 years old now, but I am one of the transgender people that knew as a very, very, very young age. I was maybe 3-4 years old, and I was not comfortable being born a boy. I used to have a very good friend that we played dolls and we played tea party, we played dress up, we played house. And I wanted to be my very best friend, but this is 1968, 1969, 1970. Who in the world thinks like that, I don't want to be like Billy down the street that wanted to ride his skateboard, or Bobby that wanted to have a bicycle. I wanted to be like my very best friend, Michelle, and look like her and dress like her. And it wasn't something you can talk to your mom, your dad, your sisters and brothers about it, and it ate me alive, and it tortured me. And I would pray to God night after night, day after day, just, God, please turn me into a girl. And it never happened. It became harder and harder, and life went on. Had no idea who to talk to, had no idea anything about why I felt like this. Nowadays we have cell phones, you have internet, you can find out a little bit about who we are, but back then there was no such thing. And I hid it very, very well. And I hid it through different activities, through collecting butterflies, through collecting stamps, insects, different activities, artwork. I painted, and I started playing football. Soccer. In America, we call it soccer. Here in Britain, we call it football. And whatever I did, I obsessed with, and I did it the very much I could. So I'd get up before school and kick the ball against the garage door and practice and practice and practice. And it stopped me thinking about wanting to be a girl, and I obsessed with it. And I obsessed and became really, really good. I was asked to try out for the 1984 Olympic team in the United States when I was 15 years old. I was asked to play professional soccer. I had scholarship offers. And again, it was a coping mechanism, and I didn't understand it. And when I was 17 years old, life went on, did not know how to deal with it. I discovered alcohol at a young age. And then when I was 17 years old, I met a young lady, a young girl. She was 15 years old, and we started a friendship, and we started a relationship. And I really, really enjoyed being with her. Her name was Barbara, and I felt comfortable with her. And I would live my life through her. I would dream of being her and being her position. And I didn't understand it. This is 1982. But I totally, totally loved her, and I came out to her after being together for about 7 months. And of course, she flipped out in 1982, but she came around the next day and says, you know what, I love you, and accepted me for who I am. So I spent day in and day out with her. When you saw Jeff, you saw Barbara. When you saw Barbara, you saw Jeff. We're together constantly. Spent 4 years together. And I proposed to her on Christmas of 1984. And of course, she just blew up in tears saying, yes, I love you. So it was Christmas time in 1985. It was a Thursday morning, December 5th. And I dropped her off at work, and later on she called me. She goes, I got off work early, come pick me up. So I went and had lunch together with her, and on the way home from lunch, we came to an intersection in Southern California, and a lady that was high on heroin and drunk ran a red light at 65 miles an hour broadsiding us, and we rolled a total of 7 times. A moving truck hit us head on head, and they landed a helicopter to take us to the hospital. And this was 3 weeks before Christmas, and they brought me back to life several times in the hospital. I broke my neck, my jaw was shattered. I was in a coma for a few days, and I woke up to make it to Barbara's funeral. And was the most devastating thing that had ever happened. You can imagine. We're just a little bit away from being married. The closest person in the world to me was now dead, and we were burying her. So my life turned into an absolute living hell. I drank and drugs and anything I could to cope this pain, and didn't know how to deal with it. And this went on for about 1.5 years until I came out to my parents in June of 1987. And when I came out to my parents, it turns out that they had always known, and they had planned on transitioning me when I was 5 years old. And so I had a hard time with it right then and there, but I came out to my parents, and right then and there was the last time I ever took a sip of alcohol or any type of drug. I became sober from right then, from that very moment. So, but this is 1987. We didn't have the word on the letter, didn't know much about what it meant to be transgender. If you remember, during that period, you would pick up a magazine, it would be lady boys and she-males.
Yeah.
Had never heard of the word transgender. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a woman with a vagina and the whole 9 yards. And in 1987, there was nowhere to look for it. So I went through a few years. Do I transition? Yes, no, yes, no. And again, in the late 80s, there are doctors, and there are surgeons, and there are other people like you and I. And and I can do it. So I took a job down in Southern California, started making money for my transition, planning on it, making money, collecting things, starting to work towards my transition. Then I met a young lady. We started hanging around. I came out to her, and she said, you know what, I'll help you with your transition, and started working with me a little bit. And we started hanging around. We started a relationship, and she ended up getting pregnant. And we had a long conversation. She said, you can go live as a woman, and I will raise this child on my own. And I really, really debated about it, because I wasn't in this position wanting to be a father, but I brought this child in this world. I cannot let a child live without a father. So I put my transition aside. Me and Rachel got married. We had 2 children together and started living the typical father life, the typical man, woman, father life. And the relationship fell apart. And after several years, me and Rachel split up and divorced. And then I started learning a little bit about who I was and exploring, living this double life. I'm a father every other day. And then long story short, me and her got together again on Christmas of 1998. And then, Christmas of 1998. And we ended up having a 3rd child. We got back together. We moved up. We had a house in Southern California. We moved up the Central Coast of California. We ended up splitting up again. And during a long 3-year custody battle, the judge in California gave me full legal physical custody of all 3 of my boys. And during this custody battle, the judge knew that I wanted to be a woman and did not care, and gave me full custody. But then, long story short, is their mother was in another car accident with one of my boys. She ended up coming back, staying with us, and helping me and saying, I will help you with your transition, Jeff. And so we started living together. We started working together. We moved to the Central Valley of California. And we started working together towards my transition. And we lived in separate bedrooms, and we discussed on how we're going to tell the kids. And she says, you have my 100% support. All I ask is you tell the older 2 boys, You wait till our youngest is 12 years old. He's too young. She said, I will move the kids to Texas, take the kids to Texas, and you stay here in California and do your transition. And she started working with me and making appointments with me, started planning with me. The time came. She took my boys, moved to California, moved to Texas while I stayed behind in California, started planning my transition. I came out to my older two boys, and they were very, very supportive and said, you know what, you're still my dad. So I did my transition. I had my surgery, started living my life. And, my eldest son started living with me. My middle son came back and forth to Texas, to California. And then my youngest was now 12 years old. And I said, it's time we tell him. Well, I started calling her saying, Rachel, it's time we tell Curtis. And suddenly she cuts off all communication between me and my two boys in Texas. My son Jeffrey can't get a hold of his mother nor his brothers, can't get a hold of anybody. I buy a plane ticket to fly to Texas. And before that plane ticket comes due, I receive a letter from the state of Texas that their mother, my child's mother, has filed suit to remove my parental rights to my youngest child, that my choice of a lifestyle is dangerous. I hired an attorney, flew to Texas, and my attorney went in there and says, Jessica has full legal physical custody of all three boys. And the judge says, not anymore, she hasn't. Her custody is now null and void. Curtis has lived in Texas for more than 6 months. Her custody is now null and void. My attorney says we had an agreement. The judge would not allow anything into the courtroom. So during this long day of court, the judge goes 2 orders. You're allowed to speak to your child via the telephone, but if you tell your child that you have transitioned, I will personally throw you in jail. I will come to California and throw you in jail, right? In Texas, you can be on trial for murder, but get bail. But this judge is saying there will be no bail. You will be going to jail if you tell your child. And he goes, second order, you have to have a psychiatric evaluation done by a right-wing theology professor in the state of Texas. I flew to Texas, went to have this evaluator, took 2 days, question after question about me and men, several different evaluators, MMPI. The evaluation came back at the end of January stating that I was the better parent and I should start seeing my child immediately. Well, then the judge would not allow it into the courtroom. The judge would not allow me. It was a court order that I have this evaluation or I go to jail. And this evaluation came back and said I was the better parent, and the judge would not allow it in the courtroom. So in June of 2013, a judge, Scott Becker in Collin County Court, Texas, stripped me away of all my parental rights to my youngest child when he was 13 years old. This judge told me I'm never allowed to speak to him, call him, talk to him, send him a postcard, send him a Christmas present, ever, ever, ever again. Later that year, on Christmas Eve, I received a letter from her attorney that they went as far as removing my name off my own child's birth certificate for being transgender. In the way we investigated and did a lot of investigation, the Department of Justice got involved with it, and they said they have never seen so much discrimination from somebody, but this judge crossed every T, dotted every I, and it would take you years and years and years to fight it. It would cost you tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars. You'd be living in Washington, D.C., and there's not much you can do about it, Jessica. It's just something that you cannot, you're going to have to deal with, right? But the lady in the Department of Justice said, you know what you should do, Jessica, is use your story. Help use it to change the world. Help the world understand that we're all equal. There's no two of us that are better. There's nobody better. There's nobody below. We are all equal, each and every single one of us. We all have our unique stories. We have transgender people. We have bisexual people. We have gender non-conforming people. We have so much diversity in the world. Let's celebrate that. Let's use it. So I started speaking, and I originally started speaking in California. And I had done California locally, community colleges, and then went to the big ones, UCLA, UC Irvine, whatever they're called up in northern San Francisco area. And then it started across the country, to Florida, to Colorado, and then it went to Yale, and then it went to Harvard, and then to University of Pennsylvania. Then I came here to England on my first out-of-the-country tour. I spoke at Oxford and Cambridge. Then I went to India, and now it's 28 countries. I've traveled over 1 million miles, helping people understand. No two of us, our stories are the same. We're each each unique, and let's celebrate that fact. And that's how you and I met, Katie. Is I met you about a year and a half ago, I think.
Yeah, it was,
about a year ago. It was in Nottingham, and you're doing the same thing. Yeah, it was in Nottingham at Starbucks. It was raining outside. But this is we both have the same dream to educate as many people, Absolutely. And this is what it takes.
And you're one of those people that when we first met, we just clicked straight away, and we just talked for ages. Yeah. It was just like meeting up with an old friend, and yet it was our first meeting, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then, but the thing is you have a story about your child, and similar, you know what I'm saying, of different countries, you know what I'm saying, but very, very similar. Another asshole judge.
Yeah. I tend not to sort of tell that story.
Okay,
that's a story that I told you, but I tend not to tell that one publicly. It's
okay.
But I have a different, obviously a different story, which a lot of my viewers will know anyway. But yeah, I mean, I just can't. It's just unbelievable, this discrimination that you suffered, and that it must be so frustrating that there's just no redress to get back to. I mean, it's just absolutely horrific.
But you know what you and I are doing, my friend Sam is doing, my friend Vicente in India are doing, I have friends in South Africa, I have friends in Israel. We're all doing the same thing, because I have spoken at Harvard Law School, I've spoken at Yale Law School, I've spoken at Stanford Law School. These are schools where the Supreme Court justices come from. These are schools where these judges, these prosecutors, now if we can help change the rules, their mind thinking that this is who we are at this age right now, look at the difference that we're going to make in the future. It may not make it right now. We are trying to do this, change the world right now, but the way we look at it is in another 10, 15 years from now, people won't even think twice about being trans, being gay, being bisexual.
Absolutely. It's all about education, isn't it? Because I think a lot of bigotry and prejudice comes from a fear of the unknown. These people that, they call themselves old school, and they don't understand it, and they don't want to understand it. But if they can actually meet someone like you or I, and we can just show them that, trans people are just ordinary people who want to be happy just like everyone else, then I think that in itself is brilliant. You don't have to be an angry anarchist and flag waver or whatever, and banner waver. You don't have to do that. That puts people off your cause. Whereas if you can actually just show that you are just an ordinary person, and you've got a sense of humour, and I know in your presentations you use a lot of humour, and it's great, and people warm to you because of that, and I think that's it's a great way of presenting, and I think that is definitely the key. Definitely.
I mean, it's down to one of the things that I believe in is with these personal journeys like you and I do is, you've seen my presentation, and I talk about football, soccer, right? And I did a talk in Plymouth about a year ago, and it was to a young school. It was through Stonewall. And the kids were anywhere between 12 to 18 years old, right? And this young man, these 3 or 4 young men, they come and they sit in the front row with these little scowl looks on their face that we have to sit and listen to this trans woman speaking, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? These are 12, 13, 14-year-old boys, and they're just giving me the dirty look. And I did my presentation, and I talked about the football. And by the end of the presentation, they were the ones asking most of the questions, okay? Their attitudes completely changed. When we normalize us, you're a father, I'm a father, we all have a connection somehow, wherever it is. I like Mini Coopers, you have a cat, I have cats. We all have a connection. We have more similarities than we do have non-similarities, if that makes sense to you.
I'm thinking it's just one part of us, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's what I try to explain. When I come to your house to have dinner, me being trans has nothing to do with it. Me being I'm talking about me. I'm
Right.
Jessica. I'm coming. You know what I mean? It's being trans is like having blonde hair, having my breasts, having whatever, having a Mini Cooper or whatever like that. This is just who we are. It's not like having a Mini Cooper, but you know what I'm saying. But this is just part of us. Okay, it's a description, but we just want to be treated like everybody else. And that's where I think the breakdown is. And that's why I personally think by going to the schools is the number one way of doing it. You know, I really think that's my personal opinion.
And I find generally that the younger generation have got it. They, I think the ones that are coming up now, I think are absolutely fantastic. I think generally I found it tends to be the older generation that need more education than the younger ones.
Yeah. And really, like I said, I don't stress about the older generation because what are they doing really now? They're usually retired and we don't need to change their minds, right? We really, really don't. The younger generation, the one. But sometimes when you get into the hospitals, the older generations are usually the head people of the hospitals, and that's where you have to fight it. Okay. Yeah. But I was at Harrogate, and I spoke at Harrogate, and this guy named Steve was the head of the hospital, and he came up to me, and I had about 150 people in the audience, and he was the head of the hospital. And he goes, "I have to leave early, right?" And I said, "You won't be able to." And afterwards, he started the standing ovation, and he came out to me and goes, "You know what? I could not leave." And these are the people. They may be a little bit older or whatever, but they're the ones with the open minds. And if this is where we can help change their views, then we're going to change the world,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it. And I think the more you can tell stories, I think the key is storytelling, like the story that you just told, and that story that I told, of my own personal journey. People, they put themselves in your shoes, and they think, well, what would I do if I was like that? And I think key to it is the message that we both give out is that being trans isn't a choice. When people say it's a lifestyle choice, it's not. There's no choice about being trans. None at all. It chooses you. It's who you are. It's how you're born. But the only choice you have is whether you do anything about it or not. And certainly with the research that I've done, I realised that, well, actually, that most of the trans people who have decided to do something about it, okay, there's a lot of loss, pain and heartache along the way. It's a very bumpy ride. But eventually, go on to lead happy and fulfilled lives. Whereas the ones that don't decide to transition, and they end up living their lives for other people, and they're often the ones that end up in a spiral of depression and often worse, sadly. So I think certainly the key to all this is being able to live your truth, and it's amazing that both of us are allowed to live our truth. You okay?
Can you hear me? It keeps freezing up on me, and I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, we've had a few blips, but I think we're getting there.
Okay, but I could not agree with you more. And one of the things is, I just want to have a brain fart. Sorry. I get them, okay.
As long as it's just your brain, Jessica.
I'm sorry?
As long as it's just your brain.
No, it happens to me once in a while. I had something on the tip of my tongue and it's gone. So over there. But everybody has a journey. Everybody has their own journey, and I think this is what we need to celebrate, is the beautiful of it. In different parts of the world, I've said I've gone to so many different parts of the world, and everybody celebrates their femininity and their masculinity a little bit different, and that's what's interesting and phenomenal, if that makes sense to you. And it's gorgeous.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think this is the thing, and this is what I want to do with this series of cool people, is just to show the whole diversity, and not just. I won't just be talking to trans people. It's just I've got lots of friends from different diverse backgrounds who've got incredible stories to tell. So all completely different. But even when talking to different trans people, we've all got different journeys. I mean, my
Yeah.
journey was completely different to yours, and
Yeah.
everybody's is different. So that's what I want to do. So there'll be quite a few trans people that I'll be talking to, but then there'll also be others as well. But I think I think we can all learn something from this. I think it'd be an interesting thing. So,
I learn every single day, and that'd
yeah.
be stupid if I said that there's nothing to learn.
No?
It's interesting. It's an interesting world. It really, really is.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. Right. Well, thanks ever so much for being my first cool person, Jessica. I'm really honored.
And in about 3 minutes, that thing will come back to my mind and go, "Oh, that's what it was."
It always happens to me. Go and do an interview in a radio station or a television station or something, and then it's that, as you're walking out, you think, "Oh no, I wish I'd said that," because it's just too late.
I know.
How it goes,
it's so stupid. I just go brain dead every once in a while. It happens, right? So, but thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Katie. I really, really appreciate it. Good luck, and I think we can all make a dent on changing this world. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen the next day, but bit by bit, little by little, more and more, we're all going to change the world together. It really, really happens. And I think the world will be a better place.
Absolutely. Well, we'll keep chipping away at it. And I just can't imagine how hard it was for you coming out. I only came out just over 2 years ago. It was about 2 years ago. And that was hard enough now. But obviously you did it a lot earlier than me, but as time
but mine's not compared to some of these other people, that were the frontiers. We all in 10 years, somebody will be saying the same thing to you. It's all, there's and that's what I mean. It's all relative, if that makes sense to you. Yeah.
But through people like you doing what you're doing has made it that much easier for me to come out, and then with what I'm doing, I'll make it easier for other people in the future to come out.
The next generation.
It's how it works, isn't it? So,
yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thanks ever so much, Jessica. And thanks everyone for watching. And please join me again for my next edition of Cool People.